Most countries took one look at these foods and immediately said no, banned outright, restricted, or quietly removed from shelves. But somewhere on the planet, there's always one place where locals consider it a delicacy, a cultural birthright, or simply Tuesday lunch. And that gap between disgust and devotion is exactly what we're about to eat our way through. Let's start where the gap between disgust and devotion gets very specific, because this list doesn't ease you in gently. Casu Martzu is a Sardinian sheep's milk cheese that contains live insect larvae. Not may contain. Contains intentionally as a feature. The larvae are introduced to accelerate fermentation beyond what any food safety board would call acceptable, and locals on the island have eaten it this way for generations. The European Union banned it under general food hygiene regulations, and for a stretch it nearly disappeared entirely. But Sardinians pushed back hard enough that it now exists in a legal gray zone, sold informally and served at family tables as a point of cultural pride. If you visit and someone offers you a slice, the polite thing to do is close your eyes. The impolite thing is to ask what's jumping. Hakarl, fermented Greenlandic shark from Iceland, follows the same logic. The shark's flesh is naturally toxic when fresh, loaded with urea and trimethylamine oxide. Icelanders figured out centuries ago that burying it underground for months and then hanging it to dry for several more months neutralizes the toxicity. The result smells, by most accounts, like industrial strength ammonia. It is not banned everywhere, but it is virtually absent from every food culture on Earth except Iceland's, where it is served at midwinter festivals as a connection to Viking-era survival. Gordon Ramsay famously spat it out on camera. Anthony Bourdain called it the single worst thing he ever ate. Icelanders consider both reactions a compliment. Fugu, the Japanese pufferfish, can kill you if the chef makes one wrong cut. The liver and ovaries contain tetrodotoxin, a poison with no antidote. Japan licenses chefs specifically for this preparation after years of training, and the dish remains legal there, while being tightly restricted or outright banned in most other countries. The thrill is partly the taste, partly the slight numbing sensation on the lips from trace amounts of toxin, and partly the knowledge that someone spent a decade learning not to kill you. Ortolan, a tiny songbird eaten whole in France, bones and all, traditionally with a cloth draped over your head, has been protected under EU law since the late 1990s, making its preparation illegal across Europe. But in certain corners of southwestern France, it persists quietly, served at private dinners as an act of culinary defiance. The bird is captured, fattened on millet and figs, then drowned in Armagnac. The cloth, reportedly, is to hide your shame from God. Unpasteurized raw milk is banned for direct sale to consumers in many countries and in roughly half of US states. Yet in places like France, it is considered essential to real cheese culture. The pasteurization debate, there is not a fringe position, it is mainstream. Sassafras oil, the original flavoring in root beer, was banned by the FDA decades ago after studies linked it to liver damage in animals. You won't find it in commercial products anymore. But in parts of Appalachia, people still brew sassafras tea from the root bark the old way, quietly and without apology. Ackee fruit, Jamaica's national dish, is fatal if eaten before it fully ripens. The unripe fruit contains hypoglycin A, which causes what's known as Jamaican vomiting sickness. The United States banned its import for years. Canned versions are now permitted under strict controls. Fresh ackee remains essentially unavailable outside Jamaica, where locals know exactly when the pot is ready to open and when to walk away. Kinder Surprise eggs, the chocolate egg with a toy inside, remain banned in the United States under a law prohibiting non-edible objects embedded in food, a rule that dates back to the 1930s. every other country on Earth seems to have survived them just fine. 8 down. The second half of this list is where things get genuinely harder to explain, and in one case, harder to stomach. Kinder Surprise banned in the US while the rest of the world eats them without incident. Does that feel like smart regulation or complete overkill to you? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now, let's get into the second half where the bans start making a lot more sense. Number 8, foie gras. You know what this is, even if you've never eaten it. The silky, buttery duck or goose liver that shows up on tasting menus for $40 a portion. What you might not know is how it gets that texture. A process called gavage, where a metal tube is inserted into the bird's throat and grain is force-fed directly into its stomach multiple times a day until the liver swells to roughly 10 times its normal size. California banned it. The UK banned it after Brexit. Several EU countries restrict or prohibit it. And yet France treats foie gras as a protected cultural product, and it holds an AOC designation, the same legal shield that protects Champagne and Roquefort, meaning authentic foie gras can only be produced in specific French regions under specific methods. The ban debate isn't about whether the process is uncomfortable to watch. It's about who gets to decide whether a centuries-old culinary tradition outweighs documented animal suffering. France's answer, for now, is France. Number 7, shark fin soup. The fins are sliced off live sharks and the bodies are thrown back into the ocean to sink. That's not an activist's description. That's the documented practice that drove the bans. The US, Canada, the EU, and dozens of other jurisdictions have restricted or prohibited the shark fin trade, and the US went further in 2022 with a federal level ban on buying and selling fins. Hong Kong and parts of mainland China remain among the few major markets where it's still openly served. The conservation argument is stark. Shark populations have suffered dramatic declines over recent decades, with some species losing the vast majority of their numbers largely due to finning pressure. The dish itself, incidentally, has almost no flavor. The fins are gelatinous filler. The taste comes entirely from the broth. You're paying for status and tradition, and a species is paying for it differently. Number 6, Casu Martzu. Yes, the Sardinian maggot cheese from the hook is technically illegal under EU food safety law, but walk into the right market in Sardinia and you'll find it anyway, sold under the table, priced at well over 100 euros per wheel on the informal market. Zero enforcement. The EU rule exists. The cheese also exists. Both are simultaneously true, and somehow that's more unsettling than either one alone. Number 5, Fugu. The Japanese pufferfish contains tetrodotoxin in its liver and ovaries, a poison with no antidote that is roughly 1,200 times more lethal than cyanide. Japanese chefs must complete a government-licensed training process spanning approximately 3 years before they're legally permitted to prepare it. The dish is legal in Japan and in a small number of US restaurants operating under special permits. Everywhere else, it's effectively off the table. The appeal is partly the clean, delicate taste and partly the faint, numbing sensation on your lips from trace amounts of toxin that didn't kill you. That's the whole point. Number 4, horse meat. Openly sold in France, Belgium, Kazakhstan, and Japan. Culturally taboo in the UK despite being technically legal there. Banned from human consumption labeling in many US states. The 2013 European scandal that exposed horse DNA in processed beef products, lasagnas, burgers, ready meals across multiple countries didn't make horse meat dangerous. It made it embarrassing. The meat itself was fine. The problem was that millions of people had been eating it for years without knowing, which raises a question the scandal never quite answered. If the only issue is disclosure, what exactly is the objection? Number 3, Hakarl, Greenlandic shark, fermented in Iceland for up to 18 weeks, then hung to dry. The shark's flesh is toxic when fresh, loaded with urea and trimethylamine oxide, and the fermentation process is what neutralizes it while also producing the concentrated ammonia smell that hits you before you get anywhere near the plate. Iceland is the only country that produces and legally serves it. Anthony Bourdain, who ate his way through some of the most extreme food cultures on earth, called Hakarl the single worst thing he ever tasted. Icelanders consider that a point of pride. Number 2, sassafras. The original root beer wasn't just root flavored, it was made with actual sassafras root bark, which contains saffrola oil. The FDA banned saffrole in 1960 after animal studies linked it to liver cancer. It disappeared from commercial products almost overnight. But in Vietnam, saffrole-containing ingredients are still used in traditional pho broth preparation. And in parts of Appalachia, people still brew sassafras tea from root bark the old way. The FDA banned the flavoring. They did not ban the memory of what it tasted like. And in some places, the recipe never changed. Number 1, raw oysters. This is the one. Not because raw oysters are exotic, you can order them at a casual seafood bar on a Tuesday afternoon, but because of what's living inside them. Vibrio volnificus is a bacterium that occurs naturally in warm coastal waters, concentrates inside filter-feeding oysters, and cannot be detected by smell, taste, or appearance. According to the CDC, roughly 1 in 5 people who develop a serious Vibrio volnificus infection die, sometimes within a day or two of becoming ill. Australia restricts or bans the sale of live raw oysters during warm months. Countries from Canada to New Zealand have issued seasonal recalls and advisories. The US allows them year-round with a warning label that most people at a happy hour have never read and immediately ignored. That's the payoff the whole list was building toward. Not the maggot cheese, not the pufferfish, the thing you might have eaten last weekend. The line between delicacy and danger isn't drawn by science or by risk or even by common sense, it's drawn by geography. Somewhere right now, someone is eating something that would get you arrested for serving it in your own country. And somewhere else, what you had for lunch is on a banned substances list. Subscribe if you want more like this, and watch the next video on screen right now.